Welcome to FountainCast, the official podcast of your Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce. Today is episode 4, and we are your hosts,
Betsy LaVoie, CEO and President of the Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce.
And your co-host, Kristin, Milashoski, Business Engagement at your Fountain Hills Chamber of Commerce.
We are so thrilled today. We have Jennings Imel from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And it's so funny because we always just call you Jennings. So it's fun that we had that little conversation before we started, if that was a first or last name. And then here I go and mess it up right away. But we're thrilled to have you here. Thank you for being here. And we'd love for you to start, Jennings, just by sharing a little bit more about you and your role at the U.S. Chamber.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Betsy and Kristin.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the opportunity to be on the show and talk a little bit about the U.S. Chamber and the work that we do and how we work with the Fountain Hills Chamber as well. But as you said, my name is Jennings Imel with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I run our Western Regional Office, which is located in Southern California. So I get the privilege of covering 5 states, including the great state of Arizona, my favorite state, of course.
Of course,
yes.
Love
well
coming
said.
out here. Yep. It always helps when it's like 80 degrees,
Right.
in the summer.
Yep.
But I've got California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Hawaii in my region, working with chambers and congressional offices across those 5 states on a regular basis, all in support of what we're trying to do in Washington, D.C., which is get good policy done and enacted for the business community, and to prevent bad things from happening to the business community.
Right.
And so that's what we're focused on in D.C. At the U.S. Chamber, we are the world's largest business association. We are an advocacy organization that advocates on behalf of business of all shapes and sizes, every industry sector. We work on every issue you can possibly imagine that touches the business community, working directly with Congress, the House and Senate, and the White House on all of those things. So that's the main thing that we do. We do a lot of other stuff too. We've got a foundation that's involved in all kinds of good stuff. We've got American Chambers of Commerce from abroad that do all kinds of good international work. And then, of course, we were involved in politics too. And so 2026 coming up with the midterm elections.
Yes.
It's going to be a busy year as well, as always in Arizona. But that kind of just gives you a gist of some of the things that we do at the U.S. Chamber. And obviously in my role, just love working with local chambers like the Fountain Hills Chamber and Betsy. So
Awesome. And then can you share with us real quick how long you've been with the U.S. Chamber and what brought you to the role that you're in now?
Yeah, so I've been with the U.S. Chamber now for 12 years. So a long time. I've loved every minute of it, love the people that I get to work with, and love the issues that I get to work on. I believe in them. I've always been a firm believer in free markets and free enterprise and that entrepreneurial spirit of people going out there and kind of getting things done and building businesses to employ people and help their communities. So it's something that I'm passionate about and believe in very strongly. I've been doing it for 12 years, like I said. Before joining the U.S. Chamber, I was in D.C. for a couple of years. I actually went out there originally to get my master's degree in international affairs. I thought I was going to be in like foreign policy, working in State Department, doing stuff like that. That didn't end up working out.
Okay.
For the best, though, I think, ultimately. So I did that for a couple of years, went to George Washington, and then I interned and worked at a couple of different places, government affairs firm, interned on the Hill for a congressional office. And then prior to that, I worked for 3 years in the California State Legislature. So I worked for an assembly member out of Riverside County, did some campaign work, ran a few campaigns in Southern California, that sort of thing. So,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
that's where I'm from originally. I'm from LA originally, so that's where I kind of got my start, was in
Right.
SoCal.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've stayed in the political realm throughout this entire time.
I have,
Yeah.
yes, and I've seen a lot of changes. It's pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah.
Just the last 12 years since I've been at the chamber.
Right.
How politics have changed, how positions on both parties, Republicans, Democrats, that they've taken. Been pretty interesting to watch, sometimes frustrating, quite frankly. I think
Yeah.
we all see the dysfunction in D.C. and how that's gotten worse, I think. And we don't have nearly enough time on this podcast to talk about why it's gotten worse. There's myriad reasons for that.
Yeah.
But it does make it a challenge for sure. But I think it's great to like get stuff done for business when we have the opportunity. I think admittedly those windows of opportunity are getting kind of smaller and smaller. But whenever we get good stuff done, like the tax bill, for example, when we're able to get good tax policy for businesses, prevent bad stuff from happening to businesses, big, labor bill and stuff
Sure.
like that kind of stuff really kind of keeps me going, I think, despite all the challenges that we consistently face in DC.
Yeah. And do you see, working with the local chambers out here, do you see specific trends, over the last, say 5 years or even in the last year or two, even positive or something that you'd like to, have more impact and change in a positive way?
I think the great thing about working in Arizona is that the Arizona chamber business community, they get it. They understand what their purpose is and the service that they're providing to their members. The fact that they have to be engaged in advocacy. Advocacy is such a big part of what chambers do, and chambers are really one of the only entities that does it, right? I mean, speaking up on behalf of business, whether that's at city council or in front of county supervisors or state level, federal level, there aren't that many other organizations or associations that do that.
Right.
There are certainly a lot of organizations that are against us on a lot of issues, right? And so I think the chambers here, you all are so unique in a lot of ways in that you understand that. I think that there's been a longstanding culture in Arizona in the business community that we have to be engaged in this stuff. And so I really appreciate it. It makes my job a lot easier because chambers here, you guys sign on to letters whenever we're sending letters. You go to the Capitol in Phoenix, right? You're involved with the big statewide organization. You're lobbying your legislators there. You're engaged with us on the federal level. You're hosting your member of Congress. You're having these conversations. And a lot of other chambers around the country don't even know that they should be doing this
They're
stuff.
missing that piece.
Right. They think, oh, well, we don't do politics. They don't get the difference.
We can certainly
right?
relate to that.
We
We do
certainly
take a
can.
lot
Yeah.
of flack from the community about why are you voicing,
Yeah.
your opinions
Yeah.
or your thoughts on this as the Chamber of Commerce. You shouldn't be doing this. That's not your role. But
Right.
it
Right.
very much is so the role of a Chamber of Commerce.
And
To
we literally
advocate on
say-
behalf of the business community.
Yeah.
Right.
It's absolutely our job.
Yes.
It's one of our 4 pillars.
Right. Yep.
Is to advocate for you. So,
Yep, absolutely. So I think, it's been a pleasure working with the Fountain Hills Chamber and the chamber community throughout the state. Makes our job a lot easier. And I think it's yielded really positive results. And I can go over many different examples. But I think just when you look at the delegation, the congressional delegation, they really care, they pay attention. Even if you go back to like our former Senator Sinema, right, who played such a integral role in stopping bad pieces of legislation from impacting the business community. And that's because of the fact that the chamber and business community in the state of Arizona was so activated on all of these issues, whether it was tax increases or big labor issues where the federal government was going to come in and dictate how you run your workplace and that sort of thing. She was very attentive to what the business community had to say out here, and that yielded huge results. I mean, not just on the policy side, but the fact we kept the filibuster in the Senate. Right, there was a lot of pressure to undo the filibuster. So you don't have 60 votes; you just do simple majority. Which, if you have simple majority, then you don't have bipartisan buy-in.
Right.
And you need bipartisan buy-in to create durable legislation, right? And that's what we're looking for in the business community is things that are durable that we can rely on, certainty, right?
Yeah.
And so she got that, and she was ultimately, there with us on the filibuster. But that doesn't happen without the engagement from chambers and businesses across the state of Arizona. And so that's just one example out of many, but it makes our job a lot easier. And in terms of just kind of other trends, I think that we're seeing, I think that's a positive trend certainly here. I think economically, this is not just Arizona, but nationwide, there's a lot of uncertainty right
Sure.
now. Everything what's happening on the international front with trade and tariffs. The state of the economy, people are generally pretty sour on the state of the economy. You look at the consumer index, all of that stuff, jobs reports, unemployment applications going up, unemployment numbers going up. The Fed, that's why they've lowered rates, right? It's because that's their key concern. They look at that as a bigger concern than inflation at the moment.
Right.
So what we're seeing, I think, as a result of that are, businesses that are kind of pulling back from engagement with the chamber. Right, because they're just not sure what the landscape looks like in 26 and beyond. And that's unfortunate, but that just...
It's almost the exact opposite of what you
they
want
should
to
be
do,
doing.
right?
Absolutely.
You want to fully engage
Right.
with your Chamber of Commerce
Right.
and help bring your community together. It supports the local, it supports the state. It's,
Right.
yeah, it's the...
Right.
And for us to
Just
hear
ripples.
what their
Right.
concerns are so
Right.
that we can help address them
Right.
and be part of the solution
Right.
instead of just, wallowing in
Yeah.
in the state that we're in,
Right.
right? Let's, forge a
Right.
solution together.
Right. And that's what makes that advocacy piece even more important, right? Is because so much of that uncertainty stems from policy uncertainty.
Right.
Right.
And as a chamber, that's where we have to really dive in on the policy stuff and emphasize that. Like, that's what we're here for. We're here to be your advocate. And that's where we can kind of separate ourselves when businesses are thinking about, okay, well, what organization, what entity do I want to join? It's the one that's doing stuff on policy and
Right.
advocacy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that because I was thinking earlier too, people are so worried about Google and their social media analytics and all of that when you have your chambers of commerce, local to you that are where you need to go to, focus on that. And
Yep.
so I think people forget about the old school chambers of commerce. It's
Yeah.
it's the best place to be to help
Yep.
your business thrive.
That's exactly right. Yeah, there's a lot of competition elsewhere, networking
Yeah.
or social media, right? There's other avenues where businesses can maybe make connections with other people, whatever, but it's the advocacy, the old school, boots on the ground,
Yes.
have
Building
relationship with
relationships.
legislators, all that kind of stuff. That's what the chamber could do that nobody else does.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yep.
And so share with us what you've seen specifically with the recent shutdown. And since, thankfully that's in the near past, but
Yeah, well, might be coming up again, who knows? Yeah.
so anything you'd like to share that would be great for our local listeners.
Yeah, I think, the longest shutdown in American history, right? Was it 44 days?
Oh, I thought it was 43.
43
Was it
days,
44?
43, it was probably 43 days. Gosh, yeah, that was very unfortunate. Obviously, major impact for federal employees, right, directly, which has then a trickle-down effect on those local economies where those folks aren't spending money and all of that. Then you had, small businesses that have contracts with the federal government that weren't getting paid. And people forget that there's 65,000 small businesses across the country that have federal contracts. This is not
Yeah.
just large companies, Boeing, Northrop
Right.
Grumman, small mom and pop type operations. And they can't go a month and a half without getting paid.
Right.
And so you started to really see a lot of stress from that, and a lot of the other kind of factor. Obviously, the whole TSA, the FAA, air traffic control
Yes,
issue
right.
was front and center. I mean, that I think
Right
was
during
one of the
holidays,
things
too.
that
Yeah.
pushed ultimately Democrats in the Senate to finally, you got the 8 Democrats that came on and joined the Republicans to end the shutdown. I think that was one of the big issues that did it, right? Once you start to have safety come into
Yeah.
play here,
Yes.
that's the last thing that anybody wants on their watch, right? Is like a major safety incident because of a government shutdown. And so that stuff started to finally, it kind of seeped through, and we were able to get a breakthrough. Thankfully, it was too late, though. I mean, that's something that should have happened way earlier. And unfortunately, the whole reason why the government was shut down was over healthcare, right? The expiring ACA premium tax credits set to expire at the end of this year. But by lengthening that shutdown, it gave Congress an even smaller window to address it.
Right.
Yeah.
It was already going to be a tough issue to find bipartisan compromise. Gee, healthcare, no kidding.
Right.
Right.
And so,
Let's make it worse. By
Right.
giving you less time.
Right,
to discuss
exactly.
it.
Just a couple of
Right.
weeks. What could go wrong? And
Right.
so it looks like, look at the Senate voted today. They had a Democrat package, a Republican package. Both went down in flames. They can't get bipartisan support. And so here we are. We've got a couple weeks left before the end of the year. And those tax credits are going to expire. Nothing's going to happen till next year. At which point, then you have politics that gets involved, right?
Right.
There are going to be incentives to maybe not make a deal because
Yeah.
healthcare is an important messaging item.
Sure.
So it's just, it didn't help anybody shutting down the government. And whenever you shut down the government and you're kind of holding hostage funding for essential things, holding that hostage to get like a specific policy win, that never works.
Right.
And it never has, and it shouldn't,
Right.
right? That sets a
Right.
terrible precedent moving forward. So we all knew what the outcome was going to be. It didn't need to go this long.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at January 30th as the next government funding deadline. So we could be looking at another government
Yeah.
shutdown at the end of January.
So why aren't they learning the first time or second time, Jennings?
It's just the numbers are so tough. It's split down the middle. You can't lose votes on either side. Obviously Republicans can't lose any votes now. Right. So Speaker Johnson already has a lot of divisions within his party. It's going to go down. His numbers are going to go down to 219 after Marjorie Taylor Greene leaves in January. 219 to 215.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be. He can only afford to lose a couple votes. And who knows, somebody else might retire.
Sure.
People might get sick, whatever. That right off the bat makes it difficult. Then you've got the whole trust issue or lack of trust between both parties. That certainly exists. There's minimal incentive for either party to work across the aisle, for folks to work across the aisle. Going back to Kristin Sinema, great example of that. What happens when you work too much across the aisle?
Right. You're
You lose your
penalized
job.
later. Yeah.
Right? And I think everybody's kind of aware of that dynamic.
Right.
And so it makes it very, very difficult.
Well, there you
Get
went.
stuff done.
You talked about the dysfunction.
Yeah.
You said we didn't have time to do that. You just went there.
We can go even deeper into that, but no, we don't have time for that.
No, I appreciate you touching on it, honestly, Jennings, because people, they might not know
Yeah.
where it's stemming from. And so it's good to know a little bit about what's happening and why it's happening and what might be coming at the end of January. It's also good to know that,
Yeah.
to prepare for that. And how can a small business prepare for that? Or do you have any ideas or resources besides go to your local chamber, of course,
the
because
local
we
chamber,
do.
of course.
Yeah.
Local chamber is always the best place to start, and just kind of to the best that you can stay up to date on what's happening in DC. The government funding issue, yes, but I think there are some other ones that are going to be front and center. Like, make sure that you are paying attention to what happens on the trade front with tariffs and the Supreme Court decision that's likely to come out at the beginning of next year. They already heard oral arguments on the president's use of IEEPA tariffs. So this is using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to do reciprocal tariffs. These are the country-specific tariffs.
Okay.
10%, 15%, 50% on Brazil, whatever. There's a real question as to whether or not the president has the authority to do those tariffs on his own, or is this truly kind of the lane of Congress to be doing? After all, these are taxes we're talking about.
Right.
And so that went before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court sounds like they're pretty skeptical of the president's position on this. So we could be looking at a ruling that rolls back some of those tariffs or undoes those tariffs, essentially saying that he does not have the authority to impose those. And then what would that mean? There's other things that the administration could do to keep tariffs in place, but what does that mean in terms of companies that have paid those tariffs?
Right.
Are they given rebates at all? That is all something that's going to have to be worked out early next year. I think that's one of the biggest issues for businesses to keep in mind and to pay attention to. Not only as it directly impacts them, but that's going to impact the broader state of the economy. Because when we talk about uncertainty, a lot of it stems from tariffs and pricing and how do we do this, right?
Right.
So that's something to definitely keep in mind next year.
Absolutely. I know talking to some of our business owners this summer, they felt like the tariffs, all the talk was keeping people out of their businesses.
Yeah.
And he said, my suppliers have worked with me to put off passing some of those costs on to me for the time being, but the public is so scared of it that they're not even coming in. And so again, coming back to your chamber to share those concerns
yes.
is the first thing that you want to do. And
Yeah.
maybe, how can we get that message out to help you get your message out that you're unaffected by it?
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And that you haven't raised your prices and you
Yes.
are still open and you do still have the great customer service and
Yeah.
everything that you've had before, everything
Right.
that we share
Yeah.
so that we can promote. Yeah.
Right,
For
right.
sure. Yes.
Yeah, and if there are things that those businesses want to bring up in terms of their concerns or how they might be negatively impacted, mention that to the local chamber. Go to the Fountain Hills Chamber, share those stories, share those stories with us directly. And I encourage you, Betsy, to if you get an opportunity, please let us know what you're hearing, because that sort of thing puts us in a better position to advocate on their behalf with the administration, because we do have those contacts. We work with the White House all the time. And so the more stories and anecdotes and stuff like that we get, the better positioned we are.
Okay, that's great.
It's
Great to hear.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes.
We could
yes.
share that with our public policy committee too. I know that
Yeah.
Nikki, who's our direct representative, who's fantastic, by the way, she keeps us well apprised of everything from the U.S. Chamber, and she's always willing to meet with our public policy committee as well.
Yeah.
And we haven't taken her up on that. So maybe that's something that we need to do in 2026
Yeah.
moving forward so that she has that direct correlation to share all the stories
Yeah.
directly from
Yeah,
our committee.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing, I know I'm probably talking too much.
No, you're not.
I
No,
feel
that's
I'm
great.
dominating the
So
conversation.
knowledgeable. It's great.
I think you all are in a pretty cool position too, because you've got an open House seat, right? So this gives you an opportunity to kind of get to know the candidate. I'm sure, you've got Matt Gress, who's already a state legislator, getting to know him better, getting to inform him and other candidates on Fountain Hills Chamber's priorities, your business community's priorities. That is really good. We always encourage chambers to build those relationships at the very beginning.
Right.
That makes a huge first impression with members of Congress as they go to Congress, because once they get there, you're in the Beltway, you get inundated with all kinds of stuff from every direction, but members tend to remember who reached out to them first, who made the contacts first.
Right.
And so it's important to do that, make those connections, inform them of kind of what your priorities are, concerns, all that sort of thing that puts you all in a better position to be represented in DC.
Okay.
That's great to
That's
know.
great advice.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I know we love working with our local electeds. Even we have Congressman Schweikert. I believe we're the first venue that he's going to be the keynote speaker since he announced he's running for Arizona State Governor. And so he's our speaker at our January 15th brunch, and we're thrilled about that. And of course, Senator Kavanaugh and having our local electeds, having that relationship with them is so important to our public policy and finding out from their point of view as it concerns our local economy is, fantastic. So thank you for that advice too.
Yeah.
And then what about workforce? Talk a little bit about workforce, Jennings. We have both sides of it. We had one of our council people who actually asked us about young graduates in the United States. Are people from outside the United States getting preferential treatment for new jobs in your region? I know we talked a little bit about the most qualified employee is going to be hired, but if you're seeing a trend in that way, and then on the flip side of that, we did have someone ask about these encore careers. So after they've already worked an entire lifetime, how come people aren't retiring at 65? So I know it's a lot of question in one question, but
No, you're right. And we're not seeing any kind of a trend of companies that are trying to hire, from outside of the United States.
Okay, great.
On purpose or anything it's not like they're deliberately looking for talent from Europe or
International.
Asia
Sure.
or whatever. Companies want to get talent close to home, right? For many, many reasons, but one of the best ones, it's your community. These are people that are going to stick around to. Companies are looking for people that are going to be invested in the job and stick around.
Right.
And if, they have to do a long commute or whatever and have, create all kinds of strain at home, that's obviously not going to be a good thing. So companies want to find local talent. And that's what they prioritize. It's just what we've seen is just an issue with the ability to find that local talent. And especially, when we're talking about qualified local talent, that's been one of the biggest problems.
Right.
Companies just have a tough time matching what they're looking for in job openings to what is actually being produced by K through 12 community college university systems. And then, certainly in certain sectors, it's more acute than in others. Manufacturing, for example, the trades. I think that's been talked about a lot recently. Is that there's just not enough people in the trades right now.
Yeah.
And so that needs to improve. The manufacturing stuff. There are not enough people that have the qualifications that are necessary to go into manufacturing jobs. And so that's where it's been a real challenge for businesses. And if it makes sense, if they can do it, and if they've exhausted all of their local opportunities, then yes, businesses will look outside of the borders.
Sure.
They have to.
they need a workforce,
You need,
absolutely.
right, quality workers that you
Yes.
could depend on. And so we are seeing that, but definitely the preference is always going to be to hire locally. It's just we have to do something about the pipeline of talent. And that takes local, state, federal kind of government-driven solutions to a degree, right?
Absolutely.
And then to your other question about, people that have retired and have re-entered the workforce, that also goes hand in hand with the issue I was just talking about of lack of talent, lack of quality talent.
Yes.
I think we see that all the time where folks are retiring and then their employer is kind of insisting that they come back because whoever they hired to replace them isn't working out or they're struggling to fill that role.
Right.
And so we're seeing that happen a lot more and more. Also, we've talked about the fact that, life expectancy is long, right? And, we're a healthy country, which is great. Despite all of our healthcare challenges, we're still a relatively healthy country. We have people living long lives. We have a lot of people that were fortunate enough to retire early, maybe, in their, 50s or maybe early 60s. And so maybe after a couple of years, they kind of want to go back into the workplace, want to kind of keep that purpose-driven life kind of going, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Sometimes there are economic factors, kids moving back in, whatever the case may be. But I think just demographics are going to continue to drive that trend where we don't have enough people that are entering the workforce replacing the folks that are leaving.
Right.
And that has been a long-standing issue. And you look at birth rates in this country, as in most of the rest of the developed world, continue to be too low. Oftentimes they're below replacement level.
Right.
And you can't grow the economy if you don't have people.
Exactly.
So,
and that trickles in every area. We were just talking on 2 episodes ago about our school district and the shrinking student population at our school district, and it's nationwide. It's because that birth rate's because people are having less kids.
Right.
Therefore, less kids in the school district. It's just naturally happening.
right.
Yeah.
There are more high school seniors than there are first graders in the country.
Right. And that's a problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So our message today, our PSA,
Yes.
is to get amorous.
That's right.
Start making babies.
Yeah.
We need it for our economy and for our school district.
Yeah. I've got 3 kids. I'm doing my part. You've got 3,
Yep,
Kristin.
yeah,
So there you go.
2
You got
kids.
2. There you go. We're doing our part.
Yes.
So there you go.
And on that fun note, we're going to wrap it up today. And thank you so much, Jennings, for being here from the U.S. Chamber
Great
of
to hear
Commerce.
from you, Jennings.
Yep.
Yes,
Thank you.
we appreciate it very much. Thank you for watching. Make sure that you like and subscribe and share our podcast.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.